Alright, so I got a bit of a different setup here for my camera and everything. Kind of just set it up on the fly. Hopefully it doesn't fall over. I got my little camera tripod on top of my computer screen, so we'll see how this goes. But gonna review a movie I watched about a week, maybe a week and a half ago. I watched it not too recently, but Velvet Goldmine. I've had this in my Netflix queue for a really long time. That's stayed on there for quite a while. I'm surprised they didn't take it off or something. Usually that happens. So this is Velvet Goldmine from 1998. It's directed by Todd Haynes. He's a pretty well respected actor. He doesn't have a ton of directing credits. Not a lot of recognizable ones right away either, but he did a movie called Far From Heaven, which I've seen. It's really good. It has Julianne Moore and Dennis Quaid and a couple other actors, and it's a period piece from like the 50s, and it deals with sexuality and stuff like that, and some taboo stuff like homosexuality. That's a really good movie, and it's had a lot of critical praise too. And then he did more recently a movie called I'm Not There, which is a bunch of different actors portraying different kinds of versions of Bob Dylan. Kate Blanchett is famously one of them, and Christian Bale and Heath Ledger played one version. So that's probably his most well known for recent movies, anyway. But this is before all those. This is '98, and I mean, this is also a really well known movie because it's a movie that was in the early careers for some big name actors. So Ewan McGregor, Christian Bale, and Jonathan Rhys Meyers are the three main leads, and of course they're all gonna go on to be very good actors in their own right. And this is pretty early in all their careers. So this movie, it takes place, starts in 1984, and at first we're following Christian Bale's character. He plays Arthur Stewart, and he's a journalist. He's a reporter for a magazine, and they want to have him do a story on a popular glam rock artist from the 70s. His name was Brian Slade, and he did a big publicity fake prank type thing at one of his concerts. And so he was up on stage, and somebody shot him, and they acted like was shot and killed on stage, but it turned out to be a hoax. And Arthur was actually at that concert when he was a kid, and so they wanted to. Is about 10 or so years later, in 1984, and they want him to do a story about whatever happened to this glam rock star, Brian Slade. I don't know if I mentioned, Brian Slade is played by Jonathan Rhys Meyers. If you don't know Jonathan Rhys Meyers, he's semi-recognizable. I really know him from The Tudors. He played King Henry VIII in that show, which is really good, and he's in Mission Impossible, one of the more recent Mission Impossible movies. But he plays Brian Slade, this glam rock star. And then eventually we get to Ewan McGregor's character comes in later. He plays a guy named Kurt Wilde, but I'll get to that in a bit here. So you kind of have these two parallel stories going on. You have one, which is Arthur, the reporter, just trying to learn about Brian Slade and his life. And so he's learning about his life and career as he goes and visits people. And one of the main people that he gets the story from is Mandy Slade, played by Toni Collette. And she was Brian's wife for a long time. So we get most of Brian's story from her as she tells it to Arthur. But so there's kind of like dual stories going on. We're getting Brian Slade's story, and then also we're getting Arthur's story about him growing up in the 70s as an adolescent in England, going through a lot of troubles with his sexuality, so he had a lot of painful memories. And you kind of see him growing up as a teen and identifying with this glam rock movement and stuff like that, kind of coming into his own and finding he feels like alone and a stranger. And you kind of see him meet other people that share similar musical tastes and sexual identity, stuff like that. So that's going on. But then the majority of the story is about Brian Slade, I would say. It's almost 50-50, but maybe 60-40. A little more on Brian Slade's character. So it shows him going through his career and becoming this huge glam rock star. And it's funny because this is, I don't know if it was almost, it's pretty autobiographical about David Bowie. So basically what we're getting with Brian Slade is David Bowie's life story, or his glam rock story, at least. If you don't know, glam rock was a phase of rock and roll in the 70s. It started in England. David Bowie is the easiest person to think of, the most popular, probably. When he was Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, that tour, that period of his career is glam rock. So he's one of the biggest, and this is kind of his story. But some of the other big ones, I wanted to watch this also because I started actually getting into the glam rock music quite a bit. I've always liked David Bowie, but I've been getting into T-Rex, is another one of the big glam rock artists, and he's actually the one that kind of coined the term, or the first one to do it. He went on the show and had somebody put glitter on him, and they coined that glam rock. T-Rex is really good. A couple other big ones are a band called Sweet, another one called Slade, which is funny because the main guy's name is Brian Slade, so it's kind of a winking at that band, I would assume. But anyways, and then Ewan McGregor plays Kurt Wilde, and his character is pretty much an homage or a representation of Iggy Pop. So we see Brian Slade sees him. He plays Kurt Wilde's an American, and he sees him at a concert, and he's doesn't have a shirt on, and has very similar mannerisms to Iggy Pop. So that's kind of who they're playing. That's who their characters kind of represent. Brian Slade is supposed to be David Bowie, and Kurt Wilde is supposed to be Iggy Pop. And so, I guess, I don't know if I want to go into the plot too much more, but like I mentioned, you have Brian Slade going through his career, becoming a popular glam rock star, and then he kind of mentors Kurt Wilde. It doesn't really mentor him, but they partner up. He's producing one of his albums, and there's kind of a bit of a relationship going on with those two, and then you have Arthur, Christian Bale's character, his story about being an adolescent and growing up, and coming to terms with his own sexuality and stuff like that. So those are the two stories that we have, and they're kind of concurrent and go on at the same time. And so like I mentioned, I like that I wasn't obviously born in the 70s, so I didn't go through that era, but I like the music. It is really good. Those main bands that I mentioned. I was somewhat disappointed in the music. The music that they play that are actual songs from that era, so any like T-Rex or David Bowie songs that they play, like Gary Glitter or something like that, actual songs that they play that are from the era are really good. Maybe they're sung by somebody else in the movie, but those songs are good. Unfortunately, the ones that they made for the movie are not as good, and you can distinctly tell if it's a good song, it was probably from the period. If it's not as good, it's probably just made up for the movie. I thought that was pretty unfortunate because I'd heard good things about this movie, that it had a really good fictional band and everything like that. There's a lot of good artists in the 90s that were doing some of the singing for the movie as well. I know Tom York from Radiohead did some of the singing, and I can't think of the others off the top of my head, but they had some pretty good artists doing the singing, so I was kind of surprised that just the songwriting in general just didn't work out as well for some reason. But yeah, in general, I was kind of disappointed in the whole movie. It's not erratic, but it's coherent. It's just kind of, I don't know, a little jumbled, and there's certain parts that kind of go in and out, and jump around a little bit. I guess maybe I had pretty high expectations. I'll admit that, but I didn't think it was that great. Unfortunately, I think maybe it got a little too fantastical at points, and some sort of, I don't know. You can't tell if they're like shooting a music video or if it's somebody's kind of daydreaming. Just kind of weird flourishes. So I think maybe if they didn't split the story between the two, between Arthur's story and his reporting and his growing up, and then also having the Brian Slade, Kurt Wilde as separate, maybe if they just focused on one a little bit more, it would have been better. I think a straight on biopic of David Bowie and Iggy Pop would be awesome, instead of doing it's kind of an homage to him and making it kind of different and a little more fantastical or fake. Would be great. I'd love to see a documentary about them because they're great characters in general. But yeah, overall, it just kind of didn't really work out that well for me. So I'm giving it a 2.75 out of 5. But I don't know. I guess it's kind of worth a watch if you're. I mean, I really like Christian Bale and I like Ewan McGregor and Jonathan Rhys Meyers. So maybe you just want to check it out to see them. I'd be hesitant to recommend it if you're interested in the glam rock and you want to kind of see what it's about. I'd say I wouldn't recommend it because I think it's a bad representation of that. I'd probably just give you the music to listen to. Or there's I know there's a documentary called Boland's Boogie about the singer from T-Rex. I think they did that movie in the 70s, and I think it has like Ringo Starr and a bunch of the Beatles and stuff like that. Probably recommend that over this movie. But maybe worth a watch for the performances of Ewan McGregor and Christian Bale, just to check out their whole filmography. And I didn't prepare a sign-off, and I can't remember any of the if there's any taglines or anything in the movie. But so yeah, I'll just end it there.